Superior Court of California, County of Los Angeles, in the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA097211. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the
Oh, I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember it like it was yesterday. And many of the younger people who are watching this are not going to understand why there was such a polarizing separation between the majority of black and white people in America during the OJ Simpson trial, the trial of the century. Most of you will not understand it. So let me paint the backdrop for you. You see, merely about 2 to 3 years prior, in 1990, the O.J. Simpson verdict was read October 3rd, 1995. And it was such a huge case that my military unit in Germany, which had never had televisions in everyone's office, put televisions in everybody's office just so we can watch this trial. That's how big this trial was in 1995, that you got your tax dollars being spent so that military personnel could watch this trial as it was happening. And my unit was 36 people, 16 black people and Spanish, and the other 20 people were Caucasians. And when I tell you, we had one Asian, sorry. And when I tell you, a unit that had traveled together, had events together, didn't care about ranks at a lot of events, we were separated at that time frame, like most of America was separated at that time frame. But for you to fully understand it, what you have to understand is that 3 years prior to that, what we had was the Rodney King verdict. And if you younger people don't know who Rodney King was, he has absolutely nothing to do with Martin Luther King. But Rodney King was a guy who was on some drugs. The police chased him for like 30 miles through residential districts and all kinds of other areas. And then when they did catch him, they beat this man worse than how people have gone to jail for beating dogs. Yes, you go and kick a dog, you will go to jail. But they beat him, I think, with a billy club like 96 times in the head. They kicked him like 56 times. The man was on the ground and they were still beating him and kicking him and beating him and kicking him. And these 4 police officers who were indicted got off. And this is the 92 LA riots when that happened. Because it was like this is the beginning of recording. Y'all think y'all knew with all this recording police activities? Nah, that was the beginning of it. That was the beginning of it, because the black community and the people of color community had been complaining about being over-policed and police brutality, and here it was. And we just knew that those cops was going to go to jail, but then those cops didn't. They didn't. They let them off. A mostly white jury let them off. And so the O.J. Simpson trial for black people wasn't about whether or not he was guilty. You talk to most black people today, and they will probably confirm that O.J. either did it or had something to do with it. But it wasn't about his guilt. or his innocence for us. It was about equal treatment and fairness. And that is why you saw such celebration amongst black people and people of color, is because it was like, here was an example of us beating the system that has beat us and held us down and incarcerated many who were innocent. If you go and do the research, you'll find that the majority of people who are exonerated from crimes are people of color, not Caucasians. And it just demonstrates this system that we've had to endure. And this is in 92. So we're talking, about 30, almost 30 years after integration. And here we are still having to deal with a hidden form of segregation based on treatment. So it was a victory for black people, whereas white people saw it as, how could this black man get off? And that's why it was so polarizing. I mean, God, dog, for the next year, that's all people, for the year that the trial went on, and the next year thereafter, that's all people just talked about that over and over again. And here we are, almost 32 years after the Rodney King verdict, which was April 29th, 1992. Here we are almost 32 years from that. And then we had the OJ Simpson trial. And you would think that in those almost 30 years of OJ Simpson, those 30 plus years of Rodney King, that things have gotten a lot better. But nope, it didn't. And we saw that a few years back with what happened to, I believe his name is Gardner, who was in New York and was choked and murder, death, killed by police officers for selling Lucy's. And then we had my man in Ferguson, Missouri, whose name just fell out my head, who, it didn't matter, who was kneeled on his neck until he passed away crying for his mother. And we see that the same type of thing that happened during Rodney King hadn't changed. The only difference is that OJ had money. That was the only difference. And so the injustices are still there. The over-policing and the brutalities are still there. And even when we had, what was the white guy? Reginald Denny. Many of you don't even know who Reginald Denny was. He was pulled out of his car by, I believe, 4 or 5 black people during, either during the riots or during the LA riots. I'm not exactly sure. But anyway, and he was beaten to death, right? And those guys got off. And black people, honestly, it was a victory of defeating the system. And and that man didn't deserve to lose his life. Rodney King didn't deserve to be beaten like he did. The 2 people who died during OJ Simpson didn't deserve to die. The Gardner didn't deserve to die. The guy in Ferguson, Missouri didn't deserve to die. The young lady down in, I believe, Alabama, she didn't deserve to die. Not at the hands of those who are supposed to protect you, and not at the hands of anybody else. None of them were supposed to die. So the victories and the celebrations actually have nothing to do with that. It has more to do with the system to which we are still being punished by. That has been the problem. That is still the problem, is that we are held captive by these systems, which are continuously perpetuated by the actual people, by you and by me, by the people. We are the ones who allow this by thinking that our hands are tied. And the thing about it is that when it comes to race, most of the white people were like, well, he was on drugs, he was driving recklessly. They found a justification for the police brutality. Whereas instead of just looking and saying, regardless of what they had done, no one deserved to die or to be beaten in these manners. And yet Mike Vick cousins are doing dog fightings at a house that he just owns, and then he's punished severely, because one of the things that black people realize is that to white people, dogs are more valuable than human life, and that's a problem.